And you say that Israel is not intentionally killing innocent people, but it knows it is killing a lot of innocent people. So its argument is we're going after Hamas, they're embedded in civilian populations, but they are killing a lot of innocent civilians every single day. And not just killing them, they're now starving them, which will also lead to deaths, which is a deliberate, willful act of trying to kill people.
I love it when John and Douglas Murray and these people say, oh, we've been on the ground in Gaza. Yeah, as guests of the Israeli military that's doing the killing, starving and maiming, and you've come back and done exactly what they wanted to do. You've done their propaganda for them. And actually, even if you forget about all the innocent Palestinians they killed, even if you don't give a shit about the people of Gaza, even if you only care about the people of Israel, Israel's not any safer today. Israel is not winning this war.
Piers Morgan looks like he finally grew conscious. The man who once treated nuance like it was COVID has officially joined the Mehdi Hasan reality tour, and this time they're tag teaming against the spine doctor of Israel's propaganda machine, featuring none other than John "But War Isn't a Crime" Spencer. For nearly 2 years, Gaza has been reduced to dust, dignity, and death, with children starving, aid workers targeted, journalists silenced and killed, yet somehow John still insists that Israel is merely the innocent roommate who accidentally burned the entire house down while holding a flamethrower. Piers, to his credit though, asked what many of us have screamed into the void: if Israel's mission was to dismantle Hamas, why are we watching a live-stream genocide instead? Mehdi, as always, brings the receipts from maggot-infested wounds to ICC indictments. And still, John shakes his head like he's allergic to facts. The double standards are nauseating. Ukraine, open your arms. Gaza, open the exits. One is hailed for resistance, the other punished for existing. But now, even Piers Morgan sees the crack in the Hasbara dam, and that is a plot twist no one saw coming. Let's jump in.
I don't know the answer to that question, Piers, and I'm glad we're in agreement. I wish we weren't. Actually, I wish I had been wrong and you were right. I wish that a year ago when I said on your show, you said, well, if it's not about the hostages, what's it about? And I said, it's about depopulating Gaza. It's about conquering Gaza. I wish I'd been wrong. But as you said, Bezalel Smotrich, the finance minister in the Israeli government, said this week, we are there to conquer, cleanse, and remain. Those are his words. We are disassembling Gaza, he said. We are leaving it as piles of rubble. He says, we're doing something that no one's done in the world before. He bragged out loud, and he said, yes, the Gazans will have to leave. So all of those things are stuff some of us were saying last year. I wish we hadn't been vindicated in this horrific way. The killing is ongoing. The starvation is ongoing. And look, I do hope that a dam is bursting. You mentioned the genocide word. Shmuel Lederman, who is an Israeli researcher of genocide, spent much of 2024 saying it's not a genocide, it's not a genocide. He was interviewed by a Dutch newspaper last week. He said, I've changed my position. It is a genocide. He said, in my field, there's a consensus among genocide scholars that it's a genocide. In fact, that Dutch newspaper interviewed 7 leading scholars of genocide. Every single one said, we think what's happening in Gaza is a genocide. In fact, this week, Piers, you have an Israeli former general, Yair Golan, saying a sane country does not attack civilians, does not kill babies as a hobby, and does not expel civilian populations. That is Yair Golan, the former deputy chief of the Israeli military, prominent Israeli politician. He was a hero on October the 7th, fought Hamas himself on October the 7th. This is what he said this week.
Okay, John Spencer, you've been kind of pulling a lot of faces there. You obviously don't agree. But given that so many allies of Israel are now raising massive alarm bells about what is happening, you can't be comfortable, surely, with what is going on in Gaza, are you?
Absolutely not. I think it's horrible. I think there are people suffering. I just am not misinformed on who is the cause of that suffering, that it isn't Israel, that war isn't a crime. War should be avoided at all costs, and Israel did that. And this war didn't start 75 years ago. This war started on October 7th when Hamas invaded Israel and tried to destroy and actually did genocidal acts. I agree that there's a lot of suffering happening in Gaza, and it's the list of people who are responsible. Israel's not on it in my list. Hamas is on it, and I actually have solutions. You asked Mehdi for a solution. I have solutions based on the history of war. Number one solution is to encourage Egypt to open the gate that they control and create a humanitarian zone. Let every woman, child, and elderly person out of Gaza, just like you and I have discussed in the past about Ukraine. 5 million women, children, elderly left Ukraine to escape Russia's evil and bombardments. That could be done today, and it's criminal that it hasn't happened today. Now, Mehdi uses experts, although I thought, credentialism and expert theory was a bad thing today. I've been on the ground, although I've heard that that's a bad thing as well. And what's missing here is, again, which is why I was shaking my head, is that you believe, based on statements of politicians that are not the actual government and the decision makers of the institution that Israel is intentionally causing this harm. That's false as well. Point the finger at Hamas, as you've said in the past, Piers, and I'm sorry we've lost you. Maybe you and I can go to Gaza because it's not true that international
actually,
media
it's
can't
interesting.
go
I
to
mean,
Gaza.
look, just on that, John. Look, you haven't lost me. I
Go to Gaza.
I still think Hamas is a terrorist organisation which committed one of the worst terrorist crimes of the last century, and they should absolutely no longer have any power in that region. They should absolutely be dismantled as a political force and the rest of it. I just see no evidence that Israel's mission statement to eradicate Hamas has worked. In fact, conversely, more and more reports are coming out that for every Hamas terrorist who's been killed, they're being replaced by 4 or 5 people who share that ideology. So the mission statement isn't working. And you say that Israel is not intentionally killing innocent people, but it knows it is killing a lot of innocent people. So its argument is we're going after Hamas, they're embedded in civilian populations, but they are killing a lot of innocent civilians every single day. And not just killing them, they're now starving them, which will also lead to deaths, which is a deliberate, willful act of trying to kill people. Would you accept that?
It's a war crime.
No, not at all. No. I mean,
starving people?
You can have your own opinions based on your assessment. Yeah, absolutely not starving people. So you're talking about the last 2 months of trucks not going in because Hamas was diverting it. Although the 42 days prior to that, 25,000 trucks went into Gaza. There is absolutely people hungry in Gaza. But Israel is not intentionally starving civilians. Is it trying to starve Hamas combatants in this war that was started on October 7th? No. The evidence doesn't show that. This is the lies, damn lies of statistics and using certain organizations that are using trusted agents. Here's a good, for instance, recently, Mehdi put on a British doctor in southern Gaza on his show. Maybe you've had him on, and he's talking about how bad the hospitals are. He's sitting in the European hospital in southern Gaza, where they just killed Mohammed Sinwar, who was in a tunnel underneath the hospital. This double standard about Israel, this double standard about war is problematic, Piers, and here's why. We're going to validate the practice of taking hostages. We're going to validate the use of your own population as human shields, because that's what Hamas is doing. Now, innocent civilians, of course, innocent civilians have died because Hamas does things like not let them evacuate when they're told to evacuate, like actually holding children in their arms while they shoot at the IDF. And again, we can go, and Mehdi can probably go with Al Jazeera to the Hamas side and look for ourselves on what you think Israel is trying to do. I also have well, what did you want Israel to do on October 7th? And had the world not stopped and done things like don't go to Rafah where the hostages are, where Yahya Sinwar is,
all right,
this war would be over by now.
Okay, I'll bring Mehdi to respond. I mean, the one thing I would say is Israel's ongoing refusal to allow international journalists to operate freely in Gaza is a suppression of us uncovering the reality. You say come into Gaza.
That's
actually
not true.
is
Fox News.
No. Israel
Trey Yanks,
Israel has
CNN.
barred almost every international journalist from getting anywhere near it. You know that, and I know that, and it's
I'll be there for my 6th time. Next month.
It's unprecedented for international journalists to be banned in this way from a war zone. It's unprecedented, and it does beg the question, John. Why? Now, Mehdi, your response to what John has said there.
I mean, I don't know how I can respond. So much gaslighting from the very beginning. John has been on the ground in Gaza, as an embed. I love it when John and Douglas Murray and these people say, oh, we've been on the ground in Gaza. Yeah, as guests of the Israeli military that's doing the killing, starving and maiming. And you've come back and done exactly what they wanted to do. You've done their propaganda for them. Journalists have not been allowed freely into Gaza. That's why every major media organization on planet Earth has said to the Israeli government, you must allow journalists in. The Palestinian journalists who are there have been killed in record numbers. Of course, Piers, you're right. They want to hide what they're doing. That's why they're killing the journalists there and blocking the journalists from coming in. This idea that he's been on the ground. Yeah, I did interview a doctor, a British plastic surgeon, Dr. Tom Patoka. And by the way, he wasn't in the European hospital because the hospital got bombed by Israel. So he was in another hospital, and he talked to me about how he has to treat patients who have maggots in their wounds. He has to treat patients without limbs. He has to treat children. I've interviewed multiple doctors on the ground in Gaza, actually in Gaza, not hanging around with Israeli military. military, and they've all said the same thing. American doctors, British doctors, Canadian doctors, they've all talked about how many kids they saw with sniper bullets to the head and chest. Israel does intentionally kill civilians. That's why Benjamin Netanyahu and Yoav Gallant were indicted at the International Criminal Court for precisely those charges, for willful killing of Palestinians, for murder and persecution. That's why they've been indicted. That's why every human rights group in the world says war crimes are being committed. They've killed people holding white flags. We've seen it with our own eyes. They've bombed buildings without warning with families inside, like the Al-Dos family that I often cite in October 2023. They've dropped 2,000-pound bombs on refugee camps full of hundreds of people. They have killed 7 aid workers in a clearly marked World Central Kitchen aid convoy. They've bombed World Food Programme convoys, leading to Cindy McCain, the wife of the most pro-Israeli senator of my lifetime, to come out and condemn Israel for attacking aid workers. John wants you to ignore Cindy McCain and British and American doctors and human rights groups and your own lying eyes watching people with white flags being gunned down. He wants you to believe him and his Israeli military minders.
Okay, Mehdi, before we go back to John to respond to that, the question that he raised, and I think I've asked you this before, but I'm still curious about, given the way this has all played out, how should, and I saw Bassem Youssef being asked this on trigonometry last week, I think it was, and he struggled to answer. How should Israel have responded to a terrorist attack, which, just to remind viewers, over 1,200 people were murdered, nearly 7,000 more were wounded, over 250 people, including babies and Holocaust survivors, were kidnapped and taken hostage, and many of those have died. How should Israel have responded to the biggest attack on its people and its land since its existence?
So there's no easy answer to that question, Piers, and you might not like the answer I give you, which is that Israel should have responded by abiding by international law, by sticking with the rules of armed conflict, by targeting only the people they believe carried out the crime. They should have used an international coalition of countries that was fully behind them. The majority of the world was behind Israel after the tragedy of October the 7th. And by the way, I have a longer memory than maybe some people in this country. After 9/11, I got asked the same question. Well, what should we do if we don't bomb Afghanistan? What should we do if we don't go after bin Laden, etc.? How did that work out? 23 years later, your pal Donald Trump, Piers, is taking pictures with the former leader of Al-Qaeda, who's still on a globally designated terrorist wanted list, right? That's where we came. The war on terror was a complete failure. And some of us who saw that, and by the way, Joe Biden even said this in one of his more coherent moments. He said Israel should learn from our lessons. Israel did not learn from the US lessons. And actually, even if you forget about all the innocent Palestinians they killed, even if you don't give a shit about the people of Gaza, even if you only care about the people of Israel, Israel's not any safer today. Israel is not winning this war. John said on Times Radio a year ago, I went back and checked, March of last year, John said, we're very close to winning. Israel's close to victory. Over a year later, they're not close to victory. They're just starving children and denying baby formula. And the former Israeli general who ran the Gaza division said a few months ago, Hamas is winning this war. So they've not made themselves any more secure. I don't have some perfect solution for what they should have done on October 7th. But I do think they shouldn't have killed 50 to 100,000 people, and they should have made themselves less secure. And by the way, the Prime Minister should have resigned because he's the one who let it happen on his watch.
Well, I certainly agree with that. And I do think there'll be a day of reckoning for Netanyahu.
And there you have it. John Spencer, the self-proclaimed war expert, doing somersaults around war crimes like it's an Olympic gymnastic final for Team Hasbro. He wants us to believe Israel is conducting the most humane genocide in human history. Just rubble, famine, snipers, and, oh yeah, not intentional. Meanwhile, the rest of us, including Piers frickin' Morgan, are watching babies starve, doctors sob, and aid convoy turned into target practice. Let's be honest, when Piers Morgan starts sounding like Mehdi Hasan, you know the Israeli narrative has jumped the shark. Mehdi didn't just come with facts, he brought a flamethrower to John's gaslight camp, and watching John melt down in real time while citing war isn't a crime might be the most unintentionally comedic war defense ever aired on live TV. This debate wasn't even close. Piers and Mehdi held a moral compass. John brought a compass, turned it upside down, and then blamed Hamas for the weather. If you still can't tell who's on the right side of history after this, maybe you've been embedded with the wrong army for too long. Don't forget to like, share, and comment down below. Catch y'all on the next one.